Hey, it's Steve here at I'mResponding.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to set up TwoToneDetect on a Windows computer.
The basic idea behind TwoToneDetect is getting your radio's audio into your computer and then out to your members. You can see here in this diagram that the audio is going from the radio tower to your radios, into the computer, then out to your members through the I'mResponding system. To run TwoToneDetect on a Windows operating system computer, here's a shopping list of some things that you may want to get or make sure that you have available to you before you get started. First thing you need is a listening device, a pager, scanner, or radio. In this case, this is a scanner that we bought off the internet, and you'll notice that it has what we call a battery delete. You don't want to have your scanner, pager, or radio in a charging cradle because that could create some interference that would be picked up by TwoToneDetect. This battery delete allows the device to be plugged in directly to a power source without relying on battery power or a charging cradle. The audio cable, a shielded audio cable if possible. The shielded audio cable has a special layer that helps keep electromagnetic interference outside of the audio that's actually going through the wire itself. This will make sure that your radio's information is getting directly into the computer without having other white noise or ambient electronics interfere with the process. On a Windows computer, you only need to have an external sound card if your Windows computer's sound card is otherwise being used, or if your Windows computer does not have one for some reason. A lot of people like going this route because they like to have the extra device. Just make sure that you read the instructions with the external sound card if you choose to buy one. It is not required for most Windows computers. Here you'll see my radio hooked up with the audio cable to the right side going directly into the headphone port of my laptop. That's all that is typically needed for a Windows computer setup. In this image you see the radio still plugged in to the right side with the audio cable coming out, and the audio cable is going into the USB sound card, which is plugged into the USB plug of my laptop. This specific sound card does like to have something plugged into both the audio input and the audio output in order to work correctly. So you'll notice that there is another wire there going off to the right hand side. On the Windows computer, after you get all of the hardware set up as we've showed, you're going to go to the sound control panel and choose the option that says recording at the top. I'm going to play some audio, and you'll see that the graph is going to respond as the tones are being played. Now what you'll notice is that during the times that the tones were being played, the graph was responding properly. It was going up and down. We want these graphs to pretty much stay on the lower 25%. If the audio is maxing all the way out to the very, very top, or if it's going beyond the middle regularly, the volume level may be too loud for TwoToneDetect. Imagine, if you will, getting in your car with the volume turned all the way up. The music coming through is going to be so loud that you may not be able to tell one band from another or even one genre of music from another. So it is important that the audio level coming into the computer is down low. There are typically two ways that you can control the volume coming into the computer. Your listening device most likely has a mechanical volume knob. I would highly suggest having that at like 10 to 20% of the maximum, so it's going to be turned down very low. You also have a digital volume control. So we're going to go to this option here. We're going to double click, go to the option that says levels, and here I'm going to change the input level. I'm going to turn it down quite a bit, the microphone boost. I'm just going to turn it off entirely. You'll see now that the upper microphone is not as responsive. We've turned the volume level down. When I snap my fingers, it does respond, but it's a little bit lower level than it would have been a few moments ago. This is crucial to set the audio levels prior to even opening the two-tone program. We want to make sure that the audio coming into the computer is not too loud and that it is working correctly. Once this is done, we're now going to incorporate the two-tone program. Now that we have the audio set up, we need to set up the TwoToneDetect program itself. The first thing we need to do, if you've not done so already, is to give yourself the permission to manage the TwoToneDetect program. We're going to do this by going into your I'm Responding website profile and going to the permissions at the bottom. Being that this is a brand new permission, although you're an administrator, you may not have access. At the bottom of your profile, there is a permission to manage TwoToneDetect settings. Be sure that bubble is checked to yes. When your profile is updated with the permission to manage TwoToneDetect settings, you'll see that button here on the left side. You're going to go to the option that says Generate TwoToneDetect API Key. You'll notice that the API key is right in the middle of the screen. You're going to want to keep that handy for later. For right now, we're just going to click on the option to download the latest version of TwoToneDetect. Once that file downloads, you'll notice that it is a compressed zip file. What we're going to do is we're going to take the information from the zip file, highlight it, and drag it and drop it to a file that you've already created on your desktop. Mine is called myttd. Those 12 files, those 12 items are going to go into my folder. So you can see it just takes a few moments. Once those items are in my folder, I do not need the zip file anymore. You're going to open up TwoToneDetect from your own folder. At the bottom, you're going to go to this option that says TwoToneDetect 73G_debug. The debug program takes about 5 to 15 seconds to fully open. If the debug program never starts to populate with the frequencies and information that you're seeing here, it's not recognizing the audio input. Contact our support team. We can help you remedy that scenario. Presuming it's up and running with these frequencies and everything scrolling on the screen, you're going to go to your system tray in the lower right-hand corner of your computer screen, and you're going to click on the TwoToneDetect logo to open the TwoToneDetect GUI. You do want the GUI screen, this white screen that you see on the right, to open in Google Chrome. If it does not open in Google Chrome, please close the GUI screen, close any browsers that you may have open. You want to set Google Chrome to be your default browser. Once Google Chrome is your default browser, you're going to go to your system tray again and open the TwoToneDetect GUI. There's a couple different things that we can see on this white GUI screen. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this green audio squelch rectangle and move it all the way to the right. In doing so, you see that the debug program stopped populating with data. As I talk, the blue audio level bar is bouncing towards the right. When I'm quiet, it kind of hovers around 1/3 to the left, but as I talk, the blue audio level goes towards the right. I've moved the squelch rectangle above the blue audio level bar. If I move it within range of the blue audio level bar, it only picks up my voice when I'm talking. When I'm silent, the debug program does not populate with any data. This is what you want to do with your audio input. You would like the green audio squelch rectangle to be just above where the blue audio level bar is reaching when there is no radio transmission. You only want the debug program to populate with information when the radio is transmitting information, whether it's your tones or the dispatcher's voice. When there is no transmission, the program will not populate with any data. It essentially won't hear it. If your listening device has an audio squelch knob of its own, I would suggest that you have that audio squelch knob primarily open or set to the position where you would normally have it for normal listening, pretending it's not plugged directly into your computer. Set it in the position where it would normally be at as if you were listening to it. You don't want to hear white noise and static all the time. You just want to hear that when your dispatcher starts to talk, it then triggers the audio to come through the speaker of that listening device. So please set that knob in the appropriate place as if you weren't having it plugged into the computer. You'll notice there's different audio input device options here. These are all directly correlated to the sounds options that we were looking at earlier. We're more interested at this moment in your audio input device. So we're going to choose the one that is your line in, whether it's a USB device or your microphone input to the computer. Make sure that you have the correct device chosen here. Once we have the audio squelch and the proper devices selected, we're going to go to the option at the bottom that says Edit Config Info. This is where the API key that we looked at a moment ago is going to come in handy. So let's go back to the I'm responding administrative functions again. We are going to copy this API key in its entirety, and now we're going to go to this option that says Edit Config Info. This tab, you'll notice it opened a second tab on Google Chrome. In the settings editor, there's a question, do you want to use I'm responding for alerting? Put in the API key. All of these other fields that are listed underneath the API key are for non-I'm responding users of the Two-Tone program. You're going to skip all of these other fields. Please don't make any adjustments or settings here. At the bottom, you're going to hit Save. As I hit Save and then closed the tab, it put in a timestamp, a date and time. This is going to be a trick that you're going to utilize as you're going through the Two-Tone setup process. As you're running tests and having your dispatch center send dispatches through for you, you may occasionally need to go through that process. So notice again, I'm going to go to Edit Config Info. I'm not going to make any changes. I'm simply going to go to the bottom, hit Save. It puts a timestamp on the debug program to the left. I close that tab. So now any data that shows up after that timestamp, I can attribute to the test that I'm running, rather than a bunch of random sounds that occurred prior to my test. So this trick, going to Edit Config Info, I'll demonstrate real quick, will allow it to populate with a bunch of data. So let's say that this information here on the left side is the test that I just ran. When I go to the option that says View Debug Info and go to the very bottom of this page, this is all the data that's been populating so far since we opened it. That's a lot of information to send our support team, and we don't know exactly what we're looking at or where. So you'll notice, here's my timestamp. So this is something you can easily highlight and copy and send this data to our support team to analyze for you. This gives us pretty much all the information that we need to know about the test that you just ran. So let's close this option on the right for the View Debug Info. We're going to take a quick look at the debug information itself on the left-hand side. The information that first shows up, this is your frequency. Now typically all that we need for the frequency to program is the couple digits to the left of the decimal, and then 1, maybe 2 digits to the right of the decimal. The rest of the information is more precise than we need. This middle column is an indication of the volume level. If you're seeing numbers above 30,000 in this middle column, it's too loud. Go to your 2 different volume controls and you're going to finesse those down a little bit. Having the volume somewhere between the hundreds and the 20,000s, that's ideal. Of course, different frequencies, different sounds when you say them are going to come across louder than other sounds. But if you're ranging between the hundreds and 20,000, you're in an opportune spot to get proper audio through I'm responding. If you need assistance with this data or are having difficulty understanding how to program it, please let us know. I'm going to run a test with some tones so that you can see how it comes across on the system. Just prior to running my test with tones, I'm going to do the little trick I showed you. Edit Config Info. Just go to the bottom and hit Save. Close that tab. And again, this is the timestamp that we're going to be referring to after our test is run, so we know what data in the debug program is our test data. I'm going to let you hear the tones as I play them. So as you can see, the information that populated here on the left side after my timestamp, the volume level is around the 2000s. That's ideal. Again, it's not above 30,000, it's not above 20,000. And the tone frequencies are listed here and to the far left. Now, it's ideal if you know what your tones are in advance of setting up TwoToneDetect so that you know how to program them in. But let's say I did not know what my tones were. Each row that we see here is essentially, so this is one row, each row is essentially 25% of a second. So 4 rows is 1 second long. This frequency, 586.2, is essentially 1.5 seconds long. So let's presume that this is the tone that I'm going to set up. In the I'm Responding administrative functions under TwoToneDetect settings, I'm going to go to Manage Pager Groups, create a new pager group. We're going to call this one Test. And let's look at our debug program one more time. So the frequency that we want is 586.2. And as I mentioned, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows long. So that's essentially a second and a half. 586.2. I'm going to change this to a long tone instead of an A and a B tone. 586.2 is programmed in. The tone length, it's not 6 seconds. I'm going to put in 1.4, just a little bit less than 1.5. The reason being is that it's okay to undershoot the sounds, but if you overshoot them, the system will think that it never heard it. So it's okay to undershoot sound length just a little bit. So we've programmed in 586.2 for 1.4 seconds. These other options, we're essentially going to leave them blank. If you need help with anything like that, that'll probably come from our support team. We're going to concentrate on the tone frequency and the tone length. I'm going to save that. So after we've programmed in our long tone, I'm going to do my trick one more time. Edit config info, go to the bottom, hit save, close that tab. And that's going to register my timestamp for me on the debug program. Now this time when those same tones play, it will pick up on that 586.2 for 1.4 seconds long. Even though it plays for a hair longer, it's going to recognize it for that length of time, and that will trigger it to record my TwoToneDetect audio. Here we go with our second tone test with a pager group programmed in. So I'm going to cut that test short. The reason I'm going to cut that test short is because you'll notice test page received. That means that it worked. It shows up in this box here on the GUI screen on the right hand side. So we're going to look up at the audio. Here's my timestamp from before the test. When my tones started to play, the volume registering is right around 3000s. That's perfect. And then here's my frequency that I programmed in, 586.2 for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. And then the system says, tone set found. All that I needed to do was program the tone the way the system heard it for the length of time that the system hears it, and it now knows that my agency was triggered for a dispatch. And you can see that the debug program erupts with a lot of data, but all of this activity that's happening is letting you know it successfully sent the I'm Responding pre-alert, and then it starts recording. It's recording all of talking the dispatcher is doing, or in this case me, and then it says successfully sent IAR audio alert after the threshold of the recording is met. And that's really all there is to TwoToneDetect. We need to get audio into the computer. We need to make sure that the volume is not too loud or too quiet. Typically too loud is more of a problem. Once the audio is coming into the computer, we're going to open I'm Responding, download TwoToneDetect, save it to a file on our own desktop, run the TwoToneDetect debug program, this black screen that you see. That essentially is TwoToneDetect. You don't ever want to close that. That is the TwoToneDetect program running on your computer. If you close that, you've closed TwoTone. Once the debug program properly opens, and if it doesn't, typically it's not sensing your audio. Once the debug program properly opens, you're going to open the GUI screen, get the audio squelch right where it needs to be, edit config info, paste in your API key from the I'm Responding administrative functions. You're going to identify your pager tones, program them into the I'm Responding administrative functions, run another test or 2 or 3, making slight adjustments as needed based on the data that we see from the view debug info, and you should be all set. This is a fairly straightforward process, not to be overthought, but there are some key things that we want to do along the way. If you have difficulty, please reach out to the I'm Responding customer support team, and we are most certainly happy to help you.